Okay, welcome to the Trade Lab. Thanks for watching. We today are going to be doing a little trade on AMD. We're going to set that up. Um, First, before I do all of that, I want to talk about a couple of items with AMD and what we're doing. So, well, we'll start with these little pieces here, this trade box. So, what we're going to talk about, I don't have a Series 65 or 66. I can't give financial advice. I'm not a financial planner. So this is because this is like live out to the world. This isn't going to be like a real trade. I'll make a paper trade. I'll follow it for the week. And then I'll post up about it. If people want to see the actual trades that I make, I post almost all of those for the Patreon Premier members. So you can go do that and you can see everything. But this is more of fun. Like this is supposed to be a fun thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to write puts. They're going to be March 27 expiration. That's 8 days. And the goal here is to not have to buy the stock. The put should expire useless, and then we collect premium. And so the goal also isn't that we're super safe. Like it's really easy to select a strike price that's 15% below, and oh, no wonder it expires useless. So that's not the goal. We're trying to use the analysis to find the proper levels and go with that. So there's that. And then before we talk specifically about AMD and the trade, just a quick note about the market today, because it was the market's super bizarre anyway right now, right? Like it's just ridiculous. This morning pre-market, the indices, all of the futures for the major indices were all substantially red. Like they were all I think almost 2% into the red. Silver was down, gold was down. The entire watch list that I have on this right side, all these numbers that are, green aftermarket and whatever, this was all red. This whole thing was just red. And so I kind of decided today I wasn't necessarily going to trade anything and I was just bracing myself. But you can see that the day ended with green stuff. And in fact, the one I'm super happy about is Rocket Lab. I had written puts on Rocket Lab yesterday at $66. And then this morning I'm thinking, oh man, that's going to get crushed. Gamma's going to come in and crush me. Gamma, the Greek. And but it didn't. It rose. Among all of this red stuff this morning, Rocket Lab was green. So it was a very strange market. The volatility is just crazy right now. So we can do all the analysis in the world, and if all of a sudden all of the oil stops and the price goes through the roof and we go into a recession or a stagflation, the analysis doesn't mean as much, right? But we're going to go through AMD now. So we'll take a look at that just with this idea that, everything is crazy and we have to keep in mind, in addition to the analysis, what's going on in the world, and that can wreak some havoc. So we will try to keep some safety there. Okay, AMD, the basics. So today it ran from 192.83 to 205.88. That's a 6.78% increase from the bottom to the top. And you can see right down here, you can see where there's this line right here, this is that AMD candle for today. Week range 192 to 202. So and that all happened on Thursday of last week. We're talking about last week for that week range, right? So anyway, 52-week range 76.48 to 267. So we're sitting towards the top end of that 52-week range. Last four earnings for AMD, all of them were positive. They beat earnings, all of the last four earnings the last year, so that's great. 1 year target, analyst 1 year target is down here. You can see 292.13 on the right side, and that's an average. There's a bunch of analyst firms that put out their projections for stocks, and this is an average value for all of those firms. So let's look at let's look into the trade a little bit here. I'll push this window over to the side so it's not right in the way. So we've got the stock here. We're on a 1 day candle. I'll activate Ichimoku Cloud. You guys know I love looking at the cloud to at higher levels to kind of confirm trends and stuff. And someday maybe we'll like do a live stream where we talk about the cloud because there's a lot going on here, but it's super useful. So if I mentioned initially in the live stream description that if AMD was just a total mess, then we would use Intel as kind of a backup. And on this particular screen that we're looking at on this chart, AMD doesn't look great. It has a downward trend. Like it's not something that I would necessarily trade looking at these timescales. Or if you were trading monthly options, this doesn't really look great. We've got this blue line, this conversion line is kind of like sunken down here. The stock is below the cloud. The cloud is red. It's just not good. The lag line, this green lag line stuck in here is below the cloud. So it doesn't look great. But as we back up into a 4-hour candle, this looks a lot better, right? And so if you take this, it's like expanded, right? We're looking at two times as much data, right? Or we're taking all those candles from the 1 day, right? And we're doubling them, right? So the price action here, this price is inside the cloud, so it doesn't have this, enough bullish trend for the Ichimoku cloud to say, okay, this is a buy, but it's getting better, right? And you can see, like if I draw a little trend line, you can see like this kind of, in the last portion of this, you can kind of see this upward trend, and there's not a lot of correlation in that data, but it's still kind of trending up on super close scales. And so then if we go to the 1 hour cloud, oh, well, check that out. And so this is super interesting because this right here, it's this little area right here. I'll make one of my favorite little circles. Oh wait, that is not a circle. I have to find my circles in here somewhere. Circle, circle, circle. It's this part right there. This little area where that blue line goes above the red line. That's the baseline and the conversion line. And in this particular case, on the 1 hour candle, Ichimoku cloud just gave us a buy signal for AMD. So that's like a short time frame. When you're talking about 1 hour Ichimoku cloud, the trend there, the trend and the bias is something like, a week or a 2 week expiration on the option. So like this isn't major, right? It's very different than what you would trade necessarily on the daily candle, but this is it. This is our buy signal right there. So that's super cool. So all right, we don't have to use Intel. We can come in and we can play around with AMD, and that's great. So we're going to shut off the Ichimoku cloud. I'm going to back up. And actually, you notice I've got these trend lines in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the 1 day view. Okay, so these are 1 minute candles, and I drew these trend lines a little bit earlier today. I took a look at the stock earlier in the day just to kind of see what it was going on. And you can see how this channel that's built with these trend lines, the stock price respects that channel really well. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11 times over the course of the morning that the stock either had found resistance or support right off of the slope of those trend lines, and then it kind of came up out of this. But this is a super good sign, at least on a super short time frame, that hey, AMD is in good shape, and so we can kind of trade it. We can look at trading it. So I'm going to back out to the 1 hour candle, and we're going to turn on the 5 day, 5, 10, 20 day MA. And look at this. This is kind of cool, right? So we find that it comes up a little ways back here. There's a lot of interaction here. There's a lot of area where AMD is kind of trading with these moving averages, and then it drops back down and it comes back up and it reclaims those. It tests, there's some areas in here where it tests like this little point right here. You can see where the top of the wick on that candle tests it almost exactly. It does the same thing on this day right here. And then I'm sorry, not day, for this hour. And then 2 hours in a row right here, it tests again. That's Tuesday, 17 March in the morning. So then all of a sudden here, it kind of comes down. We think it's going to lose this 5-day. This bottom one is the 5-day. I'm sorry, that's the 10-day. So we comes down. It looks like we're going to lose the 10-day, and then boom, it breaks through. It breaks through all of them. So that's a tradable sign. And if we look here at the 50, 100, 200, we are above this 192.77, which is the 200-day. And so we're kind of trading in this region, right? And people have heard me talk like, you trade level to level. Some traders talk about trading supply to supply, but we're trading level to level. So like these are kind of our like large levels. Like these are the levels that we need to consider. That would be a huge swing, right? For us to go from 192 up to 214. Like those are our big levels. And so just to take a look really quick, we'll look at the exponential levels. So these are the 9-day, 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day exponential moving averages. And again, and in fact, if I activate the 5, 10, 20-day, you can see that there's a lot of this kind of like, they're ganging up right here. Like there's a lot they're condensed in this little area. And AMD was able to break out of all of those. And so none of these levels right here, like when we write the put, we're going to look at these levels for areas where we're going to say, well, do we think it'll fall below that, right? If we're writing calls, then we care a lot about this level, this next level up here, this 208.96. If we want to sell the stock, then it's not as big of a deal. But if we want to if we were to write a call and we don't want the stock to sell, we may say, well, if I really don't want it to sell, I'm going to put it above this 208.96. I'll write it for 209 or 209.50 because I don't know whether this level is going to get respected by the stock, but it's a bet, right? It's not a guarantee. It's kind of like I'm a scientific educated guess, right? So with all of that said, we're saying, okay, well, these are some levels that we're going to look at. So I'm going to drop back down to the day view. And now that we're on the day view here, we've got all of these levels and we're saying, okay, well, what on earth do we do with all of this now? Well, this is what we do. First of all, I'll get rid of these trend lines. I just wanted to show you guys that that's a perfect example of how they can be super useful for determining whether there's a good trend or not. So we're going to turn on here the VWAP, which you guys have seen me play with before, and these Bollinger Bands. Now, here's where we get into some funny business because the market is closed, right? So like I can't look up exact prices on options and we can't like trade it real time. But if we knew that we wanted to get into AMD, then we would come down here in the morning. We would have come down in the morning and we would have said, okay, look at this. It's dropped all the way down. It's outside of the VWAP in the morning. It's outside of the Bollinger Band. Those are 2+ sigma moves, statistically, very, very relevant. This is a perfect entry right there. In fact, let me pull this up so it's out of the volume down at the bottom. You see this now, you can see it's outside of these 2 sigma lines for the Bollinger Band. They'll turn off the VWAP. So first we've got the Bollinger Band, right? It's outside of that line. That's a 2 sigma event. It's quite significant. If we turn the VWAP back on and look at the Bollinger Band, we've got the exact same thing. It pops out. So if we were going to make the trade today and we knew we were going to make the trade, then this morning, this point right here, this 193 something is the best place. And it doesn't even have to be exactly that. Like if you're not sure, you could wait to kind of see this upward trend and then buy in at that point. Like you don't have to catch it all the way at the bottom. You don't know if you're going to catch it all the way at the bottom. So you kind of have to play around with that a little bit. But for us now, we don't have that option. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, we want to buy it like right now. This linear regression is showing us, and let me turn some of this back off so that you can see what's going on. This linear regression for this 1 minute candle is showing a drop. And so the question really becomes, well, what do we do? Like, what are we gonna write our price at? Like, how are we gonna get our entry, right? Like, how do we know that this isn't gonna just drop on us come Friday morning? Well, it's a problem, and it's not a solvable problem unless I do this early in the day when I think everybody's probably at work. So, we can do that, or we can not do it. But what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, well, let's go back to our 5-day moving average and our exponential moving average, and we have all of our levels, right? And we're going to have to find our strike price. We got to have to find the strike price that we're just going to use based on the price of the stock right now. So we've got this 202. That's the closest possible moving average right here. Let me make sure there wasn't another one in the middle. Yeah, no, okay. So this 202.03 is our closest moving average. We could use some other things, like we could say, well, we could go back to the VWAP and we could try to find an area. And in fact, let's just do that really quick. We'll go back to this 1-day view and turn the VWAP back on, turn the Bollinger Band off. And notice there's this level. There's this 2 sigma event that from the VWAP that AMD pulled out from. And it actually looks like, if you look at this, it's kind of like almost hyperbolically converging back towards that level. So this 203.99 is our first real level that we would look at. And then we've got this 201.69. So let's keep those two numbers in mind. I'll try to memorize them in my head, although I'm super not good at that. And we're going to go down and we're going to open the options chain. So, yep, okay, we already have AMD. I was like, before I started it, I was like, I'm going to put AMD in there so that I don't have to type for everybody. So anyway, so AMD's in there. This is the option chain. A quick note, like I mentioned earlier, the market's closed, and since options don't trade in after hours or pre-market, these prices will change tomorrow morning. Like, they won't change a ton, but if we go look at theta here, right? Oh, actually, I should go to March 27th. There we go. So theta here is kind of an indication of how much we can expect to drop on some of these in terms of pennies. And so there will be a drop on these options, but we don't really know what that looks like. So I'll when we choose this, I'll go and I'll plug it in tomorrow, and then we'll kind of see how it all goes. So okay, so now I don't even remember what those numbers were. So we had 203.99, 204, and 202 are our two numbers. So 204 and 202. There's this 204. Well, we don't. Okay, so they're doing it in $2.50 increments. So the 202.50 ends up being right between that. So that's our probably like our riskier number. I wouldn't want to go, in this particular case, I wouldn't want to go in the money, i.e. I wouldn't want to go higher above the 205.27 because the market is so volatile right now that, I mean, tomorrow morning AMD could go up 5% or it could go down 5% with everything else. And so you got to think, now we're like weighing in our risk and reward here. And so at 202.50, the price of that option is about $5 per share, which means that if we write, so that's about 2%, like that's about a 2% gain on this premium. So if we write an option contract, one put on AMD with a 202.50 strike price, we're going to make $500 premium on that. So that's a $20,250 investment, right, that will tie up that cash, and we'll be given $500 as a result. So that's a 2%, gain, almost, actually, right? It's almost a 2% gain. I guess 250 would be a 2% gain. So it's like 1 point, I don't know, somebody can do the math. But that's pretty good, right? So that's pretty good. So like then we can turn around and we can say, well, that means that if the stock drops $10, then it'll be 195 and we'll own it at 202.50 minus the basis that we get for the premium. Are we okay with that? Like if we're not, if we want to take less risk, then we can pop down here and we can say, okay, this one's $200. That gives us an extra $2.50, and we have a $4.10 price premium per share that we can collect on that. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I was doing my math backwards, right? This is over 2%, and this one is still just barely over 2%, right? So that's great. So $20,000 amount of money that we tie up per option contract, and we get $410 out of it. So let's go back now that we've looked at, and I don't know how much you guys have looked at options chains and like how much experience people have that are watching these. So like I can modify in the future as needed. But if we look at those values, those percentages, right? And in this particular case, we have this delta at the 200, which is 0.37, which even though it doesn't really mean this, in some ways it's kind of like a chance of assignment, right? And so you notice like right at these strike prices, it's really kind of this flip of the coin. And as you move down, like if we really, really didn't want to get this assigned, we go down to 180, right? And we don't make very much premium. We just make $79 for our 18,000. But we have almost no chance of being assigned. So if we go back and we look at these prices and we say, okay, well, how reasonable is this? Here's the 202. 202.50 is like right about there. And so we say, well, okay, if it drops below the Bollinger Band, I'm sorry, that's the VWAP. If it drops below the VWAP, we have this one support point, and that's not like incredibly confident, inspiring in today's market. But here's this other one, this 242, which is the 20-day moving average, simple moving average. And that feels pretty good, right? Like that gives us, just from what we have on the screen, and like I've said, like you can argue, a mathematician can argue that there's essentially an infinite number of support and resistance levels, right? But we're not going to go there, obviously, because this is real life. So we've got this one VWAP support, resistance, support, which in fact, if you notice AMD dropping a little bit right now, it's almost going to hit that Bollinger Band. So that feels like it's, it feels a little bit risky there, right? But if we pop down to this one, that's one more level. And then if we pop down to the 10-day, I said that was the 10-day, right? Yeah, 20-day. This is the 20-day moving average. If we write right below that at 200 even, that gives us a 42 cents drop from that we have for the stock to drop before we have to deal with an assignment. So that feels pretty good. Some people might say, whoa, I don't know, like if we go 197.50, then we get 1, 2, 3 more that we can bank on. And so this 197.50 range might feel really nice to some people. But again, if we pull up this options chart again, and we go back to March 27th, I wish it wouldn't reset like that every time. 197.50 right here, price is $3.40 a share. So we've lost a significant amount off of this option by, almost, what is that? Like 80 cents a share we lose by going from 200 to 197.50. So that's pretty good. But then, delta here is not that much different, right? 31, 37. And it looks like these values are actually updating, which is super interesting. I didn't know they did that because you can't trade options right now. Anyway, so we're going to go with the 200. The 200 there from 205 gives us a $5.27 leeway before we have to start worrying about assignment. So here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to take this 200. I'm going to take the 200 strike. I'm going to take the bid and the ask, and at least at the moment, like they're doing the price here is probably the last sale price, but the bid and the ask, that spread, I'll try to take what's right in the middle of that. I'll plug that in. I'll make a paper trade, and then over the course of the week, I'll update on what that looks like. So here's some of the criteria: is that if this thing because our goal is that we want this to expire useless on March 27th, a week from tomorrow. So if this thing drops substantially below 200, I will try to roll the option out a week. And I will only do that if we can collect additional premium dollars. Like, I won't do it if we lose money on the deal. Additionally, there's one other criteria, is that if AMD goes up very rapidly, then this 200 strike will become worth far less money. And so if it goes down here, like if you look at like a 180, the price of that option is only 79 cents. So we'll just say, if anytime during the week the value of this option drops so much that I can buy to close the option out and make a 75% gain, 75% of our premium gain, then I'll go ahead and close it out. So I think that probably is it. Hopefully this is useful for people to look at options chains and all this stuff. And if people have already looked at all of this, then let me know, make a comment on it, or reach out to me and tell me, hey, I want more stuff. I want more advanced stuff. Can we set up an iron condor or something? So any rate, that's all I have today. I'll go ahead, like I said, I'll go ahead and plug that in, and I'll keep some updates. And then next week, I'll talk about what the results, and of course it won't have expired until a day later after next week's live stream, but I'll talk about it, and then we can follow it. So as always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it as I kind of build all of this stuff out. It's nice to have people around, so I'm not talking to myself. And if anybody ever has any questions or anything, reach out, and I guess we'll talk to you guys next time. So have a good week, and thanks again. Take care.